It's not technology. Many people will get offended what I'm saying. It's not money. It's not information. It's the human being, because the human being is a meta resource. It's a resource that generates other resources. The human being generates the artificial intelligence, generate business model, generate new products, generate new system, new policies, innovative ways of doing business, of distributing product. So we have to care for the meta resource. The meta resource is always the human being. And this will be now and in 20 years' time.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am thrilled to have Dr. Bruno Cignacco. I know we've been trying to get you scheduled for a while, so I'm so grateful that our time is here today. So thank you so much for joining me from the UK.
Thank you very much for the invite. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I'd love to talk a little bit about your background and how you got into your specialty of compassionate business and really thinking about a business in a different way than most people.
Good. Thank you for the question. Yes, I have been working as a university professor, especially at a postgraduate level, but also as an international consultant for more than 30 years. And I have been in contact with different educational institutions, teaching and also training, coaching, mentoring, but also training companies and also delivering consultancy services for nearly more than 30 years. And generally speaking, my activity was based on the traditional principles of business. For example, and the most important concepts such as developing strategies, designing innovative products, negotiating with suppliers and with customers and so on. And also from the international marketing perspective, I have been advising companies on import-export activities, but also on international negotiation, international partnership. And at university level, I have been teaching business model, the traditional business model, especially marketing models such as social marketing, international marketing, customer behavior, and others. Lately, over the last 7 years, I have been researching a lot on non-traditional business topics. And this was triggered by an article that I read a long time ago that was about how to build connection in the workplace on a much more human level, connecting to, for example, colleagues on a mental and emotional level, beyond their roles. So this means that creating long-lasting relationship with different stakeholders, especially within the workplace. And I was intrigued when I read this article that it was published in Harvard Business Review. I was intrigued because most of the articles in business are about strategy, tactics, how to develop a business model, topics that we have seen once and again, and in some cases, there are topics that are focusing only on the business side of any strategy, tactics, but they don't touch on the human side, emotions, different thoughts that connect people, ideas, how to satisfy each other's needs, and also how to connect to one another on a much more personal level. I started researching on this, and I found that there is a lot of scientific studies that corroborate the fact that when you develop long-lasting relationship with different stakeholders within the company, but also outside the company, for example, suppliers, community members, business partners, customers, these companies tend to be not only more successfully economically speaking, but also they tend to have a higher reputation, they tend to have a better brand image, and they tend to have also much more loyalty from customers. So this means the customer come back to this company, recommend this company's product to other customers, and employees tend to be much more at ease in the workplace, tend to be more productive, less stressed, and also more innovative. I was very intrigued. I also started gathering cases, real cases of companies that are compassionate. This means human-oriented, that care for people, that are respectful of people, that they are, for example, they are generous, they are grateful, they are empathetic, but also they are economically successful. So this means that I look for example of companies from different sectors, like a service sector, industrial sector, and so on, that, for example, manufacturing, and I found common principles. The book is titled The Art of Compassionate Business, Main Principles for the human-oriented enterprise. The subtitle is very important because in my latest research, you won't find strategies, you won't find tactics, you won't find business model. You will find principles that I call timeless principles, such as gratitude, camaraderie, support, kindness, that can be applied today and can be applied 20 years later, and they will still apply, that they never get outdated. And this is very important because these principles are very simple to apply, but I observe that most companies have obstacles toward the implementation of this principle that we can discuss later on.
Yeah. Now, this is so interesting because, number one, we see this change since the pandemic, people really wanting to have workplaces where they feel invested, where they feel happy, where they feel connected. And I'm about to go on a trip to Vietnam next week, where I'm going to be meeting with a lot of different companies and organizations. And so in preparation with my peers who are going, we were talking about the differences in relationship, right, and based organizations and communities versus ones that are more just strategy and tactics, and how business over there and in most Southeast Asia is about the relationships, is about, and you mentioned forming communities, having key stakeholders within, but also externally to the organization. And we talked a lot about that, about how you have to really show that you're invested in the community to be a successful business in Vietnam and in many other countries. So I'm really interested to hear about some of the different case studies and examples that you found. And did you find that differences between different sectors of the world, right? For example, Southeast Asia might already have some of the, maybe it's not compassionate business, but maybe it has some of those elements versus Western Europe, Eastern Europe, United States, or North America.
Yes, very interesting. In international marketing, we divide the cultural environment into two categories. We call it, for example, Vietnam and other cultures in the South Asia area. We call collectivist cultures. This means that what is important is the community, the groups, the gatherings. And in these countries, what is most common is that before developing business, you have to know the other partner on a personal level. So this means that time is not money. Time is well invested in developing a strong, long-lasting relationship with a stakeholder, for example, potential business partner. On the other side, you have in the world what we call individualist culture. For example, UK, United States, and these cultures have the most important principle is time is money. Let's focus on the agreement. Let's focus on writing the agreement in a much more detailed way with the fine print if possible, so that we can penalize them if they don't comply with the agreement. So different views of the world, but they are very opposite. In countries that have a collectivist culture, they are more prone to appreciate the building of relationship with different stakeholders, and they're prone to foster. For example, some companies like Toyota and Honda that I mentioned in the book, they have agreement with for example, the parts of the car are supplied by hundreds of suppliers. This relationship with the suppliers that are supplying with the parts and pieces of the car in the manufacturing process, these relationships are relationships in some cases that exceed 1 decade. So this means that they're long-lasting relationships. Toyota and Honda do not want to change their supplier continually. On the contrary, they want to build and strengthen this relationship with supplier as much as possible. And they are open, Toyota and Honda, as two car manufacturing companies, very famous and prestigious, they're open to receive feedback from the suppliers. Why? Because they're specializing in their most important aspect, that is developing this part. So this means that on a regular basis, this company also have meetings and gatherings with the suppliers that are more prone to bring about positive insight, creative ideas, brainstorming. So, and this is quite important because in many cases, what you observe in individualist culture is that if supposing that the supplier doesn't comply with the agreement, well, many people and many managers and many executives will try to say, okay, you know what, this is the contract. We have to apply the penalty. We have to penalize. So they give a lot of importance and prioritize what I call the substantive aspect of business: price, quality, delivery times, instead of prioritizing also the relational aspect of business. Means, do we want to keep operating with this supplier? Do we want to build a long-term relationship with the supplier? So individualists and collectivist cultures have a different view on the business perspectives For example, from the viewpoint of relationships are more important in the collective, but also this principle apply to any culture because there's such common sense principle that when companies understand that you cannot succeed without stakeholders, with the support of stakeholders, and the only way for them to contribute willingly and without forcing them to contribute, because you cannot force them, is by building a strong relationship with suppliers, a strong relationship with customers, with employees, with community members. When you understand that the relationships with this stakeholder is the basis, is the building brick of any business activity, you are more prone to foster this relationship because you know that by not doing so, you are shooting on your foot. If you don't nurture relationship with suppliers, this supplier might switch from your company to other companies. If you do not nurture relationship with customer, this customer might become loyal to other companies. If you are not committed to employees and support them on a regular basis, for example, praising them, recognizing their achievement publicly, being generous to them, these employees, especially talented ones, will leave the company and will look for other job opportunities. So this means that it's essential, it's critical, it's crucial to build and strengthen. It's like a water in a plant. Strengthen this relationship over time. It's not a one-off process. It's not a transaction. It's a much more long-term approach. This means that building and brightening this relationship over time. And this is what we observe with successful companies, as I mentioned, Honda and Toyota are mentioned, but also other companies that I mentioned in the book like Patagonia or, for example, The Body Shop or others from different sectors where they're caring not only for the key performance indicators. This means, okay, we're getting profit, we're getting more sale, more market share, but also they're caring for what I call the qualitative aspect of business. This means, are we much more supportive with employees, with customers? Are we supported with environment? Are we donating money, for example, to foundation? Are we supporting social causes, for example, like volunteering and so on? This is quite important because if not, we stay at the basic level, which implies the economic aspect. But from viewpoint and the viewpoint of other experts, you have three aspects. The economic aspect that are very important for the company's survival and economic success. The social aspect means nurturing the human side of business, means building a strong, long-lasting relationship with different stakeholders so that you generate a continuous cycle of reciprocity, of positive reciprocity. You support them and they're more prone to support you. You contribute to them in a positive way, they're more prone to be contributing in the same way. You are generous to them. For example, you are generous with customers, they're more generous with their reviews in a positive way. They're more prone to leave positive reviews and recommend your product to other customers. Instead, if you act in a self-centered way, this means you think about only your objectives, profit, market share, what I call quantitative aspect of business, you are more prone, in many cases, by default, to try to achieve this objective by all means. Imagine you focus only on profit. Maybe you want to obtain more profit by polluting the environment and reducing the quality of the product, offering shoddy product to customers and exploiting employees, and also incurring in some illegal activity because will be cheaper and will be obviously increasing the profit, reducing the cost. You cannot pursue profit as the only objective. The profit should be balanced. These are the economic aspect or quantitative aspect, what I call the qualitative aspect. This qualitative aspect, compassion, camaraderie, gratitude, support, cannot be measured precisely, but they're as important as the quantitative aspect of business. One thought leader observed, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So this means that there are things that are important that cannot be measured precisely, like shares, market share, or, for example, stock price, or, for example, profit. But this is very important to sustain and strengthen the relationship with the stakeholders.
Yeah. Particularly in this day and age where we see, on one hand, companies that are moving more into AI and maybe laying people off because they think that the computers can do everything and they aren't bringing the care. They're only thinking about the bottom line, which is not bringing satisfaction for anybody. But then on the other hand, you do have more companies looking at how do we retain employees if you have good people working there for a longer period of time. So I wanted to ask about change management, because you've brought up some companies that from the beginning had some moral compass, they had some values towards compassion, towards being that type of business. You don't have to name names as to businesses that haven't had that, but how does one go in and help create that change from the top to change leaders into compassionate leaders, to make sure that it is a workplace where people feel valued intrinsically and extrinsically? And that
Very
then
interesting.
trickles to the customers, right?
Very interesting. First off, you have to eliminate the obstacles toward compassion that are hindering compassion or hindering more kindness in the workplace. What are the main obstacles that I observe in most companies? Can be defined with one simple word: fear. Fear is the poison for compassionate workplaces. So it's destroying trust-based workplaces, it's destroying any type of cooperation. And what are the different type of fear that I observe in the workplace that I mentioned in my book? Fear, for example, employees are fearful of being fired, fearful of making mistakes, fearful of rocking the boat and proposing innovative ideas that are against the group thinking in this company. But also, employees in many cases in a very highly competitive environments, they are fearful of their colleagues, of being outpaced by the colleagues, or my colleague will get the promotion, I won't get this, so I will have to compete instead of cooperating with the colleague there. So fear, you cannot be loving in the workplace when you are fearful. And when you are fearful, you are in a state of freeze, fight, flight mode. This means that you are defensive. This means that you are not responding in a very proactive way. You try to protect yourself. You try to withdraw in some cases from a specific environment. You try not to share relevant information because you are not trusting other people. You tend not to cooperate. You tend to be isolated. Not good. And also, when you're fearful, your discerning skill, according to research, tend to be temporarily impaired. This means that you're not thinking clearly. Why? Because you're trying to use a survival mode. You try to defend yourself from a threat. This means colleagues, your boss, your manager, the feedback that you will receive in an annual appraisal from your manager. So you're fearful of everything, and you cannot be innovative. When you're fearful, you cannot be innovative. You only resort to the basic functions on a physiological level and mental level, and you cannot be productive too because you are continually full of fear. First off, you should be identifying the areas of fear. So what are the main areas of fear? Well, a very easy way to identify fear is there micromanaging approach in this company? Are you micromanaging employees? Is micromanaging a very important issue? For example, if managers do not allow employees to apply their skill in a very free and autonomous way, this means this micromanager, I will call micromanager, is continually dictating what they have to do on a regular basis, and the employee have to ask for permission to do the simple task. This employee will feel defeated, will feel powerless, and is more prone to leave the company, even they have a good salary. Why? Because they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel supported, they don't feel trusted. And so this is quite fundamental. Are we controlling strictly everything that is done by this employee? But also, are we fostering a very highly competitive environment where people are more likely to distrust and to withdraw from cooperation from others? Well, this is very important. Are we allowing people to suggest ideas? Do we have a suggestion box in the workplace? Anonymous ideas can be deposited in the box so that people can give their view. Or are we deciding everything in a non-democratic way, means that only the ones at the top will have a say and no one else in this company will have their chance to give their opinion? So these are very simple ways to analyze and also try to implement policies within the company to prevent fear and to foster trustworthiness, to foster mutual support, to foster compassion also. Are we also flexible with the policies? This is very important. In my new research, I'm discussing policies a lot. Are we applying the policies strictly? Supposing that by contract, this employee have to go every day at a certain time, a certain amount of hours per day. But if the employee has a personal issue with a dependent at home, have, for example, a family member that is ill, we will be applying strictly these policies, or we will be flexible and compassionate. Means that we understand how they think, how they feel, and we try to support them. So this is quite important, because if not, the company is more prone to become an organization with a toxic workplace. And there is a lot of research on toxic workplace where people try to outpace each other, people follow a negative example, especially from leadership, where they're not giving the best example. In some cases, the decisions are made in an authoritarian way. They are not including others. Diversity in this type of toxic workplaces is not fostered. Diversity and inclusion is not fostered, but people in some cases feel discriminated or ridiculed if they propose new ideas. So we have to address the fear. And most workplaces have little pockets of fear. So that mean can be widespread, but in some cases it could be in certain areas, maybe in the human resources department areas, or for example, when you are hiring people, or for example, appraisal process and so on. Are we providing this employee with constructive feedback, or we try to penalize them and nag at them like naughty children? These employees are not naughty children. They are responsible employees for the reason you hire them.
Yeah.
So, but some employees I observe that in companies are treated like naughty children that cannot be trusted. How do you expect this employee to support you if you don't support them, you don't trust them?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's something that a lot of leaders really need to put a mirror up to themselves in their organizations. And that's where you come in, right? Because you do go in and you help advise these companies in change management, as well as a number of other things, everything from customer service, negotiations, social and relationship management. So that leads me to my next question, which is about the customer journey and experience and making sure that you're showing compassion. So what are some of the ways that you can make sure that you are marketing correctly and that you are showing the same values, if you're a compassionate business, that you have internally to externally to your customer base? Because we all know it's a lot easier to keep an existing customer than it is to get a new one, right? But we don't always I feel we have a lot of data points often, but we don't always use them in the correct way when we're thinking about our base.
I like the question because I'm a marketer. I like to talk about customer a lot. I used to teach customer behavior for many years. It's to change the paradigm. The most important paradigm that I observe in business that is wrong is the selling paradigm. Selling paradigm is let's try to get as many products sold as possible. The selling paradigm, it means that we are thinking about our own company. We're thinking about the sale level. We're thinking about quota, sale quota. In some cases, we push our employees to use a scripted conversation. So, okay, memorize this script. I use the same script with any customer. Doesn't matter. In a very impersonal way. Selling paradigm is a very outdated paradigm. I don't like this at all because you are not caring for customer. You are caring for your own revenues, your own market share, and so on. And you use some terms that I abhor in marketing that are customer retention. You cannot retain customers. They are autonomous to leave you whenever they want. If you don't satisfy their need, they will leave you. But it's a very well-used term in marketing, and I respect this term, but it's the wrong term in my view. And I also see in many books. You don't retain customers. The second paradigm that is completely opposite is the serving paradigm. First paradigm is selling paradigm. Second paradigm, serving customers. This means that you adopt an attitude of service. This means that you are not the most important part in this relationship. Customer is. Because at the end, they will be buying from your company if they want and if you satisfy their needs. And they will be recommending your product to other customers if you satisfy their needs effectively. How this paradigm is completely different. First off, you do not use an impersonal approach. This means that you don't try to offer the same product to any customer because even customers are divided into groups that we call in market segment. For example, teenagers, female group, living in London, and so on. Each person in this group is unique. They have a unique history, unique preferences, unique values, and so on. So this means that you have to identify the specific needs of this specific customer and try to, so this means engage in a conversation with the customer whenever possible, virtually or in person or on the phone, so that to know their needs, and also they will provide you with a lot of information. You are willing to learn from them, and you can also provide them with a lot of technical information about the range of product or services that you offer, and you try to find the match between their needs and your technical aspect of the product. In some cases, there is not a match. You do not have a product that is suitable for them. You have to be humble enough to recommend this customer to other companies. You don't try to force the sale, even the product is not suitable for them. So this means that you look for their well-being and you try to prompt them to feel positive emotion throughout the process, before selling the product, during the sale process, and post-purchase. So this means that You don't try to prompt negative emotions such as resentment, hate, regret. You don't want this because if this customer experience in any part of the process, pre-sale, during sale, or post-sale, this negative emotion, they're more prone to leave your company, to return the product, to leave negative customer reviews and push other potential customer away. But also you try to make them feel positive emotion and you try to feel them supported, avoiding any manipulative techniques. See, there is a full appendix in the book about marketing and manipulation. You try to avoid any manipulative techniques such as fine printing the contract that you try to tie them in, or for example, giving a false information, or these are the last unit that we have. No, it's not the last unit. We have a full warehouse with these units, but we try to create a scarcity. You do not use manipulative technique because customer can feel when you're trying to manipulate, but you are trying to be transparent, and you do not depersonalize customer. They are not a figure in your database. They are flesh and bone human beings with family, with negative experiences, positive experiences, dreams, aspirations. They have problems in some cases, economic problems. So you try to look for their well-being, because when you look for their well-being, they will look for the well-being of your company. They will try to come back, they will become repeat customers, and they will recommend your company to other customers and also will leave positive reviews. But also a very basic thing that I will say that is, I don't see many companies doing this. You don't try only to satisfy their needs. You can say, what are you saying, Bruno? You don't try only to satisfy, because any company can do, if you try to satisfy only their needs, you try to exceed their needs. This means that you try to delight them. You try to surprise them in a positive way. You try to create a positive imbalance. You give them more things that they expect. For example, if the customer is buying a computer in a computer shop, you give them let's say a coding course free. You give them delivery free so that the customer feels that your offer is overwhelmingly positive, overwhelmingly generous. So they try to be generous with them. Most companies try to be a bit stingy. Say, no, we give only this. We charge for the delivery. We charge for the additional aspect of... No, you try to create because when you create a positive imbalance, this means that they feel that you are generous. They feel prone to reciprocate. This is a natural aspect of any human being. When you feel that others are generous to you, what you will do? You try to compensate this imbalance. And how customers compensate this imbalance? When they feel that you are generous, they leave positive review. They become over ambassador for your brand. They foster your brand, and this improve your brand image. They are more likely to become committed and loyal. There is a lot of research on delight and loyalty. When companies delight customers, these customers are more prone to become loyal. This means customer for life. And also bring more customers. So this means that they continually... And also, when customers are delighted by companies, if the company make any mistakes, that could happen because we're all human, customers are more forgiving. Why? Because they have a very long history of the company commitment and support to this customer. And this customer is more prone to become more forgiving, understanding that we all make mistakes. The opposite happens when you are only just to satisfy their needs, or when you're not even satisfying the basic needs.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on AI, because there are companies that I know try to work with compassionate, emotionally intelligent marketing, right? Human-centered marketing, just using AI tools to make things better. We know that with personalization, right? The more we can personalize things for our customers and, like you said, surprise and delight them, add more value. Don't just look at giving them what they're expecting. So do you see that in your viewpoint and your research that generative AI and data analytics, machine learning have helped with more compassionate business, or do you think it's taken away?
Yeah, depending how you use. I like technology because technology is always welcome, but technology could be double-edged sword, right? Because at the end, if you use in a positive way, will help you, may think quicker, easier. But you have to be aware of not making technology impact on relationships in a very negative way. How this will look like when they impact on relationship in a negative way? For example, when they make the relationships with different stakeholders impersonal. Let's imagine this situation. Let's imagine that customer can complain when they find, for example, the product is a bit faulty or they want to return a product. but the customer go to the company's website and they only find the chatbot, automatic chatbot. There's no person behind. And so this means that the only way that they can access the company will be through the chatbot. No telephone number, no email. So this means that there's no real people behind. Everything is left to the devices of the technology.
Yeah.
How this customer will feel? Will feel a bit overwhelmed, might feel a bit helpless, might feel that technology took over the relationship. So what I suggest company when I deliver consultancy services to have an equilibrium between high tech, this means using technology, AI, chatbot, robots, whatever, automation, and high touch. This means we have an equilibrium between the technology that helps us to think quicker, more personalized, in some cases help us customize an offer, but also the human contact. There should be a telephone number or an email or someone real, because at the end, if you supposing that you have a company A and company B, and both offer exactly the same product, they have the same technology. The company that offer personalization, real personalization, means human beings getting in contact on the phone, by email, video conference with customer, will win this customer. Why? Because personalization is a very important differentiation point. Will position this company as much more human-oriented company. And so this means that customer will say, you know what? I'm not a figure in the database. They don't leave this only to be controlled by technology. So there should be an equilibrium. And for the reason you see companies that are mostly online, for what I call click companies like Amazon, you can still contact them on the phone. You can still send an email. You can still talk to people. The other day I talked to people from Amazon that have a problem with one of the purchases. You can talk to people. Why? Because they know that people cannot be replaced. The most important resource in a company is not artificial intelligence, it's not technology. Many people will get offended with what I'm saying. It's not money, it's not information, it's the human being, because the human being is a meta resource. It's a resource that generates other resources. The human being generates the artificial intelligence, generate business model, generate new products, generate new system, new policies, innovative ways of doing business, of distributing product. So we have to care for the meta resource. The meta resource is always the human being. And this will be now and in 20 years' time. I think that it's unlikely for us to be replaced by robots or all this that you see in science fiction movies, because the human being is the most valuable resource. And fostering this long-term relationship with different stakeholders bring about a security and safety net within the company that will help, all these stakeholders will help the company achieve their own objectives.
Yeah, fantastic. You do so many different things because you also have investments. And I noticed in your background, you also have studied NLP, right? Neuro-linguistic programming. And I'm sure that has helped shape some of the behavioral science that you've used in marketing, customer service, management, and international business.
Yes, NLP is important because NLP, one of the principles is that you always have a map of the world, but the map is not the territory. This means that it's important, that this means that your view of the world will be different from other people's view of the world. And this is the most important principle for empathy and compassion. Most companies believe that they can impose their view on business, and in international marketing it's very noticeable that big companies doing this. For example, when they enter a new cultural environment with their product that are successful in the market of origin, they try to make no adaptation to this product when introducing in a completely different culture. And this is a marketing myopia approach, because in practice, you cannot see that every cultural environment is different and you are more likely to adapt the product there. So this is one of the principles that I take from NLP, but the other principle is that people learn in different ways. For example, that some of them are much more kinesthetic or some more visual, more auditory. And this is quite relevant in a way that we have to also understand also how if we apply NLP to messages, for example, communication with customer or not, or other stakeholder, we can also check what are the most important cues. Are they, for example, using a lot of visual words or auditory words and so on? So this is quite relevant in a way that NLP can be applied. I mentioned a lot NLP in the book about the importance of assumptions. Many people are blind with the assumption that they have about others, and they do not connect to one another on a much more personal level. So this can be explored much more in detail, but many principles of NLP are mentioned in the book.
Nice. And the book is more of an academic.
The book is it's not academic at all. This was a book. It can be used in academic environment and it's used in some business school worldwide because it has a lot of example. But I saw also be very good comment from managers and CEOs and people at the executive level. Why? Because it's very practical. I try to use obviously technical vocabulary, but try not to get too academic in a way that will put some people that are really engaged in the business field away. So and also they are very easy to apply principles that are backed by science. This is quite interesting because at the end could be my personal opinion or could be based on anecdote, but this is very clearly backed by science. For example, there is an interesting study that I always mention in my talk that is about how to build much more compassionate workplace, and the potential benefit. Well, and the compassionate workplaces, what our some will call psychologically safe workplaces, are places where people are supported, they are understood, they are asked for their opinion, they are flexible, they are cooperation is fostered and so on. And there is a lot of research about the benefit of having a compassionate workplace, like a higher commitment, lower absenteeism, lower stress levels in these compassionate workplaces, higher employee satisfaction, higher customer satisfaction, because employees that are supported tend to serve customers much more effectively, and a lower stress level and more commitment. So this book can be used also by CEOs and any people working for an organization, for example, consultant, advisor, external advisor, but any people from any department, because the principles are about the human being. Like say, generosity, gratitude, the importance of having a much more meaningful mission, which include economic, social, and environmental aspect, the importance of having natural conversation within the workplace and outside the workplace. I see most of the workplaces are boring and they're stressful because people are talking only about strategy, tactic, business model, and they don't talk about personal aspect, like people can live their personal life outside the workplace. And we all have personal issues, in some cases family problems, health issues, in some cases people have economic difficulty, and they're pretending that this doesn't exist, and they pretend that people are the role, and there is nothing beyond the role. And so there are 1 or 2 chapters in the book about what I call natural conversation. This means, can we introduce much more human-oriented topics within the conversation? Can we introduce a 5-minute small talk at the beginning, where you can comment about what you did during the weekend or what are your hobbies and so on? Can we introduce some social events where people can connect to one another on a much more personal level and they can let their hair down, for example, Friday evening, and they can talk about whatever topic they want without being judged, and the CEO will be in an equal situation with the janitor and they can meet with each other on a much more personal level and come back to work much more revitalized. Well, it's not my dream. There is a lot of research that corroborate that this is possible. And companies, as I mentioned, some companies that are advanced, especially companies in the Southeast Asia area, like Toyota and Honda, they are developing this informal conversation where people can talk about topics, and these talks are welcome. Why? Because they enrich the relationship between different stakeholders within the company and also outside the companies.
Yeah, fantastic. You've given us so much to think about, Dr. Bruno, and I really appreciate that. We'll, of course, link your website and book and everything in the show notes. But I'd like to see if you have one final thought for the audience today.
Very interesting. Well, becoming more compassionate is all about self-awareness. At the end of each chapter, I included in the book self-reflection question. It's all about self-reflection. And you don't have to wait until the person at the top of your company is starting being more compassionate. Whatever position you have within a company, internally, for example, you are the customer service officer, or you're the CEO, or externally, you are the consultant or supplier, you can always infuse compassion, more compassion in the workplace and more compassion in any business relationship. So the most important self-reflection question that is repeated in almost every chapter is, how can I become more supportive, more generous, more compassionate, much kinder with different stakeholders? How can I connect to others on a much more emotional level, understanding that they don't have only economic needs, People have other type of need. They have emotional need. They need to be appreciated. They need to be cherished. They need to be cared for. They need to be supported, encouraged. And also they have mental needs also. For example, employees need to feel not bored. They need to be stimulated, trained on a regular basis, helping them explore other areas, work for other departments, and also social needs.
Yeah.
People have social needs. In many companies, I see employees working in a very isolated way without connecting to others. This is demotivating. So how can I be more compassionate, more caring, more grateful, more generous to different stakeholders? This is under your control, because you can initiate some positive ripple effect that will also spread all over the organization.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. And my last question, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, poem, verse, family motto, words that continue to inspire you on your path?
Well, I like Stephen Covey's bibliography, and I find that he's a very important thought leader. I like the concept of interdependence. You cannot succeed on your own, in life and in business. This is a very important reminder. We have the illusion of being self-sufficient, and we need others, and they need us. The only way to succeed all together is to support each other. There is an interesting study in the book that is mentioned that the most important thing that make people happy, this is a study for many decades, is relationships within the workplace and outside the workplace. So how can we nurture this relationship, making them long-term relationship, and also mutually beneficial relationship where the needs of each party is fully met?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much I know it's late there. Very much appreciate you jumping on. We'll definitely stay in touch, and we'll have to have you back on to gain even more insights from you, Dr. Bruno. So I appreciate you being on, and thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it on your favorite platform. Thank you again for tuning in. Don't forget to leave us a rating and review, and share this with somebody who you think would like our content. With that, I'm Annika Jackson, and this has been Your Brand Amplified.
Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.